Good morning, everybody. I am John Michael Gibano Obra from Santa Anastasia San Rafael National High School. Today, I will be reporting on the natural sound theory. But before we have it, let's have the definition of language and its origin. When we say language, language is a system of conventional spoken, manual, signed, or written symbols by means of which human beings, as members of a social group and participants in its culture, express themselves. The functions of language include communication, the expression of identity, play, imaginative expression, and emotional release. If there is one most distinguishing feature that makes us human, it would be our ability to enunciate words or use our language. Through language, we convey our feelings and thoughts, as well as influence others. Language is a crucial part of society and has been our primary socialization tool. Without this tool, we humans might not have been able to reach the state where we are now. Origins of language. Scholars and scientists have been arguing for centuries about the origins of language and all the questions that tie into this. The Linguistic Society of Paris, an organization dedicated to the study of languages, actually banned any debate on the issue in 1886 and did not retract it for several years. But why is it such a topic of debate? Perhaps it's because language is such a unique and complex skill. It is something that only humans are able to do. Over the years, there have been numerous attempts to teach apes to speak, and in particular chimpanzees, which are humans' closest living relatives. However, no other animal has the vocal pathology necessary to speak the way we do. Even attempting to teach chimps sign language has proven fruitless, with no animal demonstrating skill above the level of a 2-year-old human. It seems that the three things a creature needs to speak like a human are a human brain, a human's vocal cord, and the human intelligence. Human brains are perhaps the most intricate and powerful computing devices on our planet, and communication through languages the most complex behavior known to mankind. For centuries, people have speculated over the origins of human language. What is the world's oldest spoken language? Have all languages developed from a single source? How did the words come to be in the very beginning? These questions are fascinating and have provoked experiments and discussion whose history dates back at least 3 millennia. We have no direct knowledge of the origins and early development of language, nor is it easy to imagine how such knowledge might ever be obtained. But there is a fair body of indirect evidence that can be brought to bear on this subject. One theory concerning the development of language is the natural sound theory, which is based on the process of onomatopoeia. The basic idea of this theory is that early primitive words could have been imitations of natural sounds which were heard by the first humans and echoed to mimic the sounds of the world around them. A quite different view of the beginnings of language is based on the concept of natural sounds. The human auditory system is already functioning before birth, at around 7 months. That early processing capacity develops into an ability to identify sounds in the environment, allowing humans to make a connection between a sound and the thing producing that sound. This leads to the idea that primitive words derive from imitations of the natural sounds that early men and women heard around them. This theory can be subdivided into several different concepts. First, we have the Lala theory or the sing-song theory. This theory put forth that language was born of the human need to express music, poetry, and love. Both Charles Darwin and a Danish linguist named Otto Jespersen thought that emotion inspired music, which they believed could have been the predecessor to language. Jespersen wrote, "Love inspired many of the first songs and through them was instrumental in bringing about human language." The idea that speech emerged from the sounds of inspired playfulness, love, poetic sensibility, and song. This one is lovely, and no more or less likely than any of the others. This theory also claims that speech originated in song, play, laughter, and other aspects of the romantic side of life. It also argues some of our first words were long and musical rather than short grunts, some theories suppose we started with. As commonly seen in primates, hand gestures and body movement are important aspects of interaction and cooperation within societies. This leads to our discussion of the Tata theory. It states that language and the development of sound was generated to support the hand gestures and movements of the individual. So as to better demonstrate the meaning behind the gestures, these sounds progressed into more and more distinct words or combinations of sounds, inevitably leading to speech patterns. It also refers to the idea that early human speech originated from the use of tongue and mouth gestures to mimic manual gestures and gestures of the hand. For example, saying tata is like waving goodbye with your tongue. Even Charles Darwin's ideas appeared to have supported this hypothesis at one point. However, the origin of most words cannot be satisfactorily explained through this theory. Although plausible, like many of the other hypotheses, the cultural roots of varying hand gestures suggests that this is most likely not the reason behind language, where in some places, nodding means yes. In others, nodding means the opposite. Such distinct cultural differences imply that this is not a sound hypothesis. That's all. Thank you and God bless.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Mr. Benjamin T. Guzman from Santa Anastasia Santa Fe National High School, and I'm going to be your discussant. I will be giving you the second theory, and that will be the ding-dong theory. The ding-dong theory, or the ding-dong hypothesis, bases the origins of language on onomatopoeia. And when we say onomatopoeia, I believe that we are aware of its features. So that is the imitation of sounds. For examples, so one important thing to remember about this theory, it is linked or associated with onomatopoeia. Also, this idea states that language began when humans started naming things or objects after a relevant sound that was already involved in their everyday life. Do you want an example? Well, you better watch this video.
This theory posits that when they get in touch with an object, humans are prepared to emit certain sounds, as they were struck as a bell. People reacted to stimuli in the world and produced sounds or oral gesture which can reflect or harmonize with the environment. Because of this, it's argued that there is a mystical power of some things to evoke particular sounds from men. Harmony of sound and sense is independent of the imitation of one sound by another. Speech might arise as a reaction to essential qualities of objects in the environment.
Words common to our language frequently have fascination of their own when grouped together with other words having the same sound patterns. Consider clash, batch, dash, crash, slash, smash, trash, gash. All of these words terminating with ash express terrible, violent deeds and actions. Why have we chosen the sound ash to describe mutilation?
The word for mother in most languages begins with the letter M. Mater, mère, madre, mutter, mam, and mat. Is it only by accident or coincidence that the M sound is made by pursing the lips in the manner of a suckling child?
Consider some of the words that begin with FL. Some of them are flicker, flurry, flame, flounce, fly, flash, flee, fling, flash. In order to produce these sounds, our tongue moves forward rapidly to produce the FL sound. Did you notice that all these words refer to rapid movement?
Some important histories characters have supported this theory, as Plato, Pythagoras, and Müller.
Well, that was a very informative video. So it was also mentioned who are the people behind this idea. So it was Max Müller who first proposed this theory. So he stated that the theory maintains the primitive elements of the language, which are reflex expressions induced from sensory impressions. Eventually, this theory was favored by Plato and Pythagoras. They also said that the original sound people made were supposedly in harmony with the world around them. However, this theory is limited and is not applicable to all. So here are the reasons why. This theory is said to be limited for it only represents the sounds of certain objects, but it is unclear how to provide onomatopoeia for silent objects such as rock. It also does not consider abstract ideas like love or justice, as there are no sounds for these words. In addition, this theory does not supply words for grammar or abstract items in the English language, so it is not hard to imagine that these types of words are unusual and rare in most languages. Onomatopoeia is such a small part of the linguistics and varies greatly from language to language. Because of these limitations, it is considered to be a limited hypothesis or theory. For example and some additional information, we're gonna have another video. So let us all watch this.
Once upon a time, a world without language. Spoken words were not a human business. But one day, they started naming things as they sounded. And that's how the first human words were created. This is what we call the ding-dong hypothesis.
This theory of language says that everything has a particular sound. For example, when something crashes, there's a sound that we connect with this, like crash or boom when something explodes.
Cough, cough, cough. Did he say cough? Cough? Oh, so this is coughing. I'm sorry. Was it that a knock? Knock knock. Oh, so that is knocking. By the way, how would we say love according to the ding dong hypothesis? And how will we name a rock as a rock according to the ding dong hypothesis? I think we are in trouble. Reason of why the ding-dong hypothesis is a very limited hypothesis. The ding-dong hypothesis makes reference to the objects and their sounds, the natural phenomena and their sounds. According to this hypothesis, we couldn't name silent objects and we couldn't name abstract nouns. That's why the ding-dong hypothesis doesn't work as a real hypothesis.
The negative part of this theory is that it doesn't explain the origin of grammar or syntax. On the other hand, this theory doesn't work for blind or deaf people because they don't see the image that the sound represents or they don't hear the sound.
Thus, the ding-dong theory also discloses that language was originated out of a natural correspondence between objects of sense perception and the vocal noises which were part of early humans' reactions to them. Now, do you have any idea why this theory was named the ding-dong theory? I believe that we are all thinking the same thing. So this theory was named after the analogy of the sound of the bell, induced by the stroke of the clapper. So that is also another proof that this theory or this hypothesis uses or bases its origin on onomatopoeia. So that will be all for this theory. I hope that I was able to give you all the necessary information that you have to know about this theory. So another theory will be given to us by the next reporter. Thank you for watching.
Good morning everyone, my name is Marilu or Javier from Lechera Integrated School and I'm going to discuss to you the bell theory. The idea of this theory is that the first humans imitated the sounds of animals in order to refer to a certain animal. So let's take a look at this video.
In the Asian time, the mammals start communicating with others through the imitations of sounds in nature. In the example, we have a caveman that hears the sound made by a duck. Then he imitates the sound quack quack to his caveman friend to tell him about the animal he saw earlier. And then the other makes the association, and that's how language began.
So, primitive words started as an imitation of the natural sounds that early humans heard around them. The imitation of the sounds were then used to refer to the things associated with relevant sound or what we call the onomatopoeia. But what does onomatopoeia mean? Onomatopoeia is the naming of a thing or action by the vocal imitations of the sounds associated with it. Here are the examples.
splash, moo, bang, and cuckoo.
Unfortunately, this surely works in a limited extent. Here are the reasons why. This surely doesn't give us an explanation why the sounds differ from one language to another. For example, the sound of the cat. The sound of the cat in Korean is yang. But in Japanese, it is nya. And in English, it is meow. This surely has inability to describe an abstract concepts or words such as love, peace, and death. Vowel surely does not explain the creation of the words for soundless objects. And last, vowel surely doesn't give us an explanation on how grammar and syntax developed. The vowel theory seems to assume that a language is only based on a set of words naming objects. Therefore, it is not considered to be a complete explanation for the origin of the language. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you learned something from me.
Good day, everyone, especially to our lovely professor, Dr. Mirna O. Medrano. Anyway, how are you? Hope that you're all safe and fine at home. My name is Hazel Osolano de los Santos, a junior high school teacher in Binyan City, and I will be one of your discussants for today. Let me continue discussing the topic of our group, which is the origin of language. The theories that were assigned for me to share are the Poo-Poo theory and the Yo-He-Ho theory. Let's first start with the Poo-Poo theory. This theory holds that language began with interjections. Examples are spontaneous crying of pain, surprise, happiness, or other emotions.
The basis for the Poo-Poo theory holds true to the involuntary nature of human speech. Through emotional response, language and speech would have developed in tandem with human interaction and primitive emotional reactions. Such sound as ha ha ha, commonly used to denote happiness or laughter, respectively, would then develop into a more unique and case-specific series of sounds in association with other emotions and interactions. The problem with this theory, however, is that exclamations, such as the emotional responses that one might associate with these poo-poo phrases, are in fact dependent on language instead of a basis through which language can be created. For instance, the essence of emotional response for pain is ouch in English, oi in Russian, and e in Cherokee. If there was a generalized emotional response that all people made independently of each other, then perhaps there would be some legitimacy to the argument. But those noises that we all do make based on the stimuli of sneezes or hiccups cannot demonstrate common linguistic nature between peoples.
Now, let's proceed to the next theory, the Yo-He-Ho theory. According to this, language evolved from the grunts, groans, and snorts evoked by heavy physical labor.
In addition, this theory is based on the social and cultural cooperation found among early men. However, Apes have grunts, but they do not have a language like ours. To summarize my report, let us read the following information about the two theories that I have discussed. Poo-poo theory holds that the first words evolved from the natural verbal interjections humans make, such as exclaiming when surprised or yelping in pain. If yo-he-ho makes you think of the seven dwarfs working in the gem mine, you're not far off. It's the theory that language started with the rhythmic noises made when doing manual labor, which allow muscle effort to synchronize.
That's the end of my report. Thank you for listening.